Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 382. I am your host, Michael. If you're wondering where Gail is this evening, she will not be with us this evening, but in her place, along with Daniel from For Boxing News and the Inscriber, we have her comrade, her compatriot over in White Fights, Marcus. What's going on, Marcus?
Pretty good, man. Must admit, I think Gail is still recovering from that sad and unfortunate Padres loss in the playoffs. That's probably why she's not here. But she'll probably be back next week, I'm
Well,
assuming.
but on the other end, she won. She recently announced that she was won some awards from the San Diego Press Club. So shout out to her.
Ooh.
Won the first place award for and a couple of second place awards for her writing. I think her first place award was for her coverage. I think of Canelo Triple G trilogy for NY Fight. So congratulations to her
Yes.
on that. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, blog/site discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is if it pertains to the sweet science that will get discussed. If you want to find out all information, please go to the site p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find the links to where to check out everything Pound for Pound Box Report all over social media, the links to the YouTube channel, the links to the Facebook page, the links to the Twitter page, also links to where to check us out on Instagram and Instagram and Tumblr. Links to where you can check out the podcast. On all RSS fed distributed platforms, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Google Podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, anywhere and everywhere else in between, with the exception of Amazon. We're not on there yet. Also, links to where you can donate. Got Cash Me and PayPal donation links. Let donation be the best nation. If you have some spare change on hand, really be grateful if you contribute some coin to Pound for Pound Box Report. It'll help the overall productions behind the scene. If you're checking us out live on YouTube or at a later date on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe if you have not. It'll really help boost our numbers and help us get closer to monetize. And last but not least on the site, please check out the link to Beachbody on Demand. As we're getting ready to head into the holidays, just less than a week from Halloween, a month or so before Thanksgiving. If you're looking to get your body, your health and wellness game right before the holidays, check out Beachbody on Demand. Various programs for all fitness goals / interest. If you're looking for weightlifting specific, please check out Lift 4. If you're looking for an all-around fitness program to really challenge yourself, check out 6 Weeks of the Work, the P90X series. They are all still excellent, 1, 2, and 3. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, got that covered for you as well. 10 rounds, 6-week program, 3 days a week you do boxing-based cardio, 2 days a week you do weightlifting. So yeah, at the very least, check out the 14-day trial, the free 14-day trial, and that is for 2 weeks free on Beachbody on Demand. You get free access to any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand. With all that said, let's get to the fights this weekend. It was really a light weekend for boxing, so I want to focus on one fight in particular. It took place in the featherweight division on the zone. Mauricio Lara, hard-hitting 126-pounder, really came into prominence. I'm going to begin things with you, Marquise. Really came into prominence late winter last year with a surprising stoppage win over Josh Warrington. They stopped him in the 9th round. They fought a rematch in September 2021. The fight ended in a disappointing draw. 2-round, not a draw, 2-round no contest, as the fight was stopped as due to a headbutt, and Lara was too damaged to continue. Lara has fought since then, and he fought over the weekend against reasonably solid guy, Jose Sanmartin. The expectation was that he would take care of Sanmartin pretty easily, and he did just that. Stopped him in the 3rd round. If you got anything from that, Marquise, what was it? And let's also go into the future of Lara. He was supposed to fight WBA regular champ. He was supposed to fight for a title WBA regular champ. Oh my gosh, my brain freeze. The guy who stopped Michael Conlon
Lee
in the
Wood.
12th. Lee Wood, thank you. He
Yeah.
was supposed to fight Lee Wood on September 24th. That bout was scratched due to an injury suffered by Wood. After this fight, Warrington said his number one target is a fight with Warrington, who, following those two fights with Lara, went on to regain the IBF belt. He's Lara, paraphrasing him, says that he wants to end Warrington's career. He's handled my matchroom, as is Warrington and Lara. If you're Eddie Hearn, what do you do with him? Do you try to reschedule that fight with Lara? Well, between Lara and Wood, I know he mentioned that the Warrington fight was on there, but who is he kidding here? It seems to me that Warrington doesn't want to get in a third fight with him. So yeah, moving forward for Mauricio Lara, where do you see him going?
He's got to find somebody. I think the option would be Lee Wood. I don't think he's going to get Warrington at all after all of this. And after Saturday, that confirmed it, because the guy punches hard and he stays punching hard. I remember seeing him at back in March because he fought on the Chocolatito undercard, and he had the same thing. He had to knock out the night there. So he's just one of those guys. I don't think of Adrian Fierro, but no, Lara's just one of those guys, Michael, where he punches, and it's one of those things with the fight that he had this past Saturday with the guy he fought, Martin, was professional resistance. We all kind of expected that to be about 6 rounds or less, and he got it out in half that time, which was pretty good. It's pretty much the highlight of that whole fight card, actually, as well, in the zone last Saturday. But my thinking with Lara is I just think he's kind of stuck like with so many other folks at 126 who are looking for opponents, and essentially, if you're looking for title opportunities, they're all playing keep away, and they've been playing keep away pretty much this entire pandemic for one reason or another. I don't know if anyone's going to come out of the woodworks. I mean, we could mention names like Navarrete and the likes, but that's not happening either. So I would like to see Lara actually get this Wood fight, preferably. I don't know if that happens next, but this is one I'll keep an eye out for.
Your impressions of Lara's performance, and the question for you, Daniel, I mentioned Lee Wood. I mentioned Josh Warrington. You also got Navarrete, who's the WBO champion. You got the newly crowned WBC champion from the Philippines, who beat excuse me, the guy who beat the guy from the Philippines, Ray Vargas, at 126 as well. The question for you, Daniel, from the lot at 126, Marquise mentioned how big of a puncher Lara is, and he is indeed that, right? He may not be the best featherweight in the world, but is he the most dangerous?
That's going to be an interesting question, because punching-wise, he might be outside of Maxio, but Maxio, unfortunately, is one of the reasons why he lost to Vargas. Right now, only knows how to throw a punch in one manner. At least with Lara, he has a couple of techniques where he can land a good punch on you. As far as for the rest of the division, he probably is. Yeah, he probably is the hardest puncher in the division. And unfortunately, that does put him in an interesting position, because one fighter you mentioned is Ray Vargas. He's from PBC. Eddie and Al do not do business together unless they have to. Other champion is with Bob. Same thing. Eddie and Bob will not do business unless they have to. So that probably only does leave, realistically, Warrington. And Warrington wants none of that smoke. None of that smoke. Coming from Lara, he experienced it once. He does not want to experience it again. But if you're Eddie Hearn, you got to look at a risk-benefit assessment from it. Yeah, You can make money from Warrington, putting fights in leads. All you want, again, soft competition. The IBF will procure you of that. But at the same time, you need to start recouping at least some of the investment that you try to make early on when you try to open Matchroom USA. And one of those investments could be Mauricio Lara. So probably the best bet is going to have to be remaking the fight with Warrington, as much as it will feel like a betrayal to his fellow English, his fellow Brit. At the end of the day, there's probably a better long-term future with Lara than with Warrington right now at this stage. If you're looking at actually making really good fights and not just staying at a domestic level.
I'll direct the question to you as well, Marquise, before we move on to the news, because there's only one fight we're going to cover on this particular episode. Given Lara and what you've seen of him so far, in comparison to the rest of the division, in your own opinion, in your own personal rankings, where do you have Lara?
Right now, if give you a spitball here, I think he beats Vargas for that WBC belt, but we won't see that fight either. But I think he's top 5 in the division easily. I really do think it's his time to get one of these belts. It's just a matter of who's going to give him a chance at it, and rightfully so. No one's giving him one.
I would love to see him fight Navarrete. Don't know the possibility it was going to happen. You mentioned Ray Vargas' tenuous position as WBC champion because he's in negotiation to fight. He's been accepted by the WBC as an opponent to fight Oshike Foster for the vacant WBC belt at 130 pounds. So it looks like he's going to move up next. But yeah, the fight I would love to see is Lara and Navarrete. I think that would be dynamite. I think it'd be all action TNT. Mm-hmm. The possibility of it happening with Matchroom.
There's that boxing game coming out.
Yeah, between Matchroom and Aram. Who knows? Both sides should consider it. Will it happen? Yeah, don't count on it. Unfortunately, don't count on it. So Mauricio Lara, he did what he had to do. It was easy work. We will see where he goes from here. Let's move on to the big news that really encapsulated, just had all fight fans' attention throughout last week. As those know, I'm a senior writer for ThreeKingsBoxing.com. Shout out to the entire Three Kings Boxing staff. Please check out ThreeKingsBoxing.com, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. The entire crew over there, 2K, the man behind Three Kings, Bo, head of media relations, fellow senior writers, Bakari Jarrell, aka Big Cool, Red, who does all the editing behind the scenes. And the situation I'm talking about here, and the reason I have this particular episode titled "We Were Also Hopeful," and that is we were also hopeful regarding a possible fight between Errol Spence, Bud Crawford for all the belts at 147 pounds. I'll go to you, Daniel, and you can follow up. Marquise, throughout the year, fans, pundits were teased that this fight could be a possibility, right? There was word that a possible date was in place for November. Both fighters suggested that the fight was going to happen this year. Okay, it wasn't going to happen this year. Turns out it wasn't going to happen this year, but still, folks had their fingers crossed that if it's not going to happen this year, it could happen first couple of months of next year. Well, news broke. Well, first of all, Spence went on a Twitter rant about the fight. News broke that that negotiations has bogged down, and that Crawford will instead fight David Avanesyan on December the 10th. Fans and punditry alike are outraged or pissed off or appalled that this fight, it looks like, is not going to happen anytime soon. I'll go to you, Daniel. I put blame on everybody involved, be it Crawford, be it his team, be it Spence, be it PBC, for everything being shot to hell at this point. In your perspective, the reason that you think that this fight has gone, negotiations has gone down the tube.
Well, I was always a realist in this situation. I knew they were never going to fight this year. There was going to be some issue that happened. And once they mentioned, okay, it's with the lawyers, I knew, like, yeah, this is going to blow up. Because if you say it with the lawyers, you're leaving it to the people that can find the smallest thing to disagree with. And ultimately blow something up, which is what happened. Now, it's not what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be a situation where Bud was going to be stuck in court dealing with the top rank lawsuit. That'd be the reason to keep him away. But unfortunately, the end result's still the same. They're not going to be fighting each other this year. Now, when it came to this situation, the fight with Avanesyan, I think it's mainly just to have Bud fight once a year because Spence already fought once this year. So it's a way for him to keep active, for him to say, "You fought once this year. I'm fighting once this year," and it's a voluntary defense. And honestly, it could even just be just a play to keep Oscar De La Hoya away from calling the WBO and enforcing Virgil Ortiz as the mandatory. Because if that's the point, then Bud has to deal with Virgil as the mandatory, win or lose. But this has also opened up those very same avenues for Staniosis in the WBA and Gerald Boots Ennis in the IBF to do the exact same thing with Spence now. They both have petitioned to enforce the mandatory status. Which means that realistically, especially now with the IBF, because it involves Boots Ennis, there's a realistic chance that if we ever going to see this fight, we're not going to see this fight until late 2023. Because at this point, you need to put that fight, Ennis and Spence, you probably put that fight early on in the year or close to mid-year, giving you enough time to train for the fight with Bud. But again, unfortunately, that also opens up the avenue for Oscar to call WBO. And then Bud may have to deal with Virgil. So the best laid plans could happen again. We might actually be seeing a similar situation to what happened with the 115-pound division, where we all thought we were going to get this little tournament with these specific fighters coming in together and handling their business. But lo and behold, Bam Rodriguez comes along and knocks out the apple cart. So there's actually a chance that Stenio Boots Ennis or Virgil Ortiz might come in and knock the apple cart. And could you imagine that, folks? Instead of a title unification fight between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, you might be getting somewhere down the line 2023 a unification match between Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz.
Very, very interesting. I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. I know a point of contention for Crawford was that he felt that PBC was not on the up and up in terms of revealing the full numbers of how much that Spitz was going to get, how much that he was going to get, blah blah blah. But in the aftermath of Crawford announcing his fight with Avanesyan, there seems to be more folks, particularly on boxing social media, message boards or whatever, who are throwing the blame solely at his feet, right, Marquise? The question is it fair to put the majority of faults on Crawford? Does Spence and PBC is there some culpability on their part? your thoughts on the reaction, and particularly a lot of the venom that's been directed at Terence Crawford's way.
It's kind of funny, but it's also just a byproduct of what social media has become. Actually, I'm going to put this a question back to you guys in a second because my buddy Kyle over at the Say What You Say Boxing podcast hit me up to this off the air a while back yesterday. He compares boxing Twitter currently now to the old Max boxing forums of the mid 2000s. And honestly, guys, I was covering boxing in the mid 2000s, but I was actually not on the message board, so I missed all of that nonsense. I was on MySpace like everybody else. But no, the one thing with the whole process with Crawford and Spence and who's to blame and all of that stuff, but it's so funny. I put a great tweet, and I think it coincides with what I read from you, Mike, on Free Kings Boxing, actually, where one side saying that they don't want it, the other side saying they tried and they moved on. It's like if you're picking sides of that coin's not worth it, and at the end of the day, we're not getting the fight, so it's kind of monotonous. But I mean, it gives people something to do on the internet. I guess I think people are hiring on Indeed, but when this whole thing came down, where it's like, I'm just trying to figure out at what point did anybody think with Terence Crawford's side of this? I know he wasn't with Top Rank and all, but at what point did anybody think this fight was going to happen and not be what we all still think it is currently, which is that old Looney Tune boxing picture of the PBC welterweights playing games inside the house and Terence Crawford sitting outside the window? Nothing's changed since that cartoon. That's been about 4 years, and essentially at some point with Crawford, I think he was just either biding time or. I kind of do wonder what happened with that Top Rank lawsuit. We all know Bob likes to sue a lot, and usually these things don't just disappear like that unless something happened or they got closed out of court. I kind of wonder what happened with that. I need to find a follow up. But at the end of the day with this, I just think that these guys are just taking too long on this, and neither guy really wanted this fight. And at the end of the day, guys, this fight, for as much as social media thinks this fight is as big as Fury Wilder, it's not. It just isn't.
I want to make reference to the last episode, which we did, the Ladies Love Boxing series, with Gail, in the ring with Christine and Sadet, aka Black Amazon on Twitter. Sadet said that she thinks that we will see Usyk Fury before we will see a fight between Spence Crawford. Given this story, given this latest development with Crawford and Spence, and given Usyk, who when he earlier this week when he received his ring magazine, his ring belt, and he reiterated the fact that he wants to fight Fury and he wants to fight him in his next fight. I'll pose what she said directly to you two this evening. Do you think we will see what fight do you think we will see first? A fight between Usyk and Fury for undisputed heavyweight title, or a welterweight fight between Crawford and Spence and Crawford for undisputed status in that division?
Man,
the floor is open to whoever want to tackle it first.
I'll tackle it first, and I'm thinking honestly, Michael, we get neither, because boxing has told us one thing and one thing only, that the fans don't get what we want. That's just what it comes down to. But if I had to pick one, I'll pick the heavyweights. But I'm picking that with the asterisks because I'm really thinking at the end of the day, because we keep hearing, how Fury's calling out all these folks. He's calling out Joshua, sign the contract, Dawson, all other nonsense, and then he fights Derek Chisora for a third time in December.
And Usyk responds by calling him a drunk. Hell,
it's pretty funny actually. So at the end of the day, I kind of want to see. I think we will get Fury Usyk first more than anything else. I just think the logistics at the end of the day that's more feasible. But both of them are just kind of like one of those things where I don't think we get any one of those things next though. I really do think we get some mandatory tune-up for Usyk. I really do. I think we're getting one. I think we're getting one of these random WBA voluntary defenses, or one of these top 15 WBA guys, or whatever is not in the IBF vacant section. One of those chumps. So, but I'm looking forward to finding out if we get either one of those. But if I had to put any money on it, it's going to be Fury. It's going to be the heavyweights.
What say you, Daniel?
I'm more confident to say neither, unfortunately, because when it comes to the heavyweights, and this has been my position for a while, To me, Tyson Fury will never make the fight with Alexander Usyk because he knows he cannot beat Usyk. So he'll never try to make that fight. Really, really try to make that fight. He'll find a way to stay active, do these voluntary defenses, maybe get lucky and get a fourth fight with Wilder as a mandatory. But something that keeps him busy from it, which makes Usyk in the meantime get stuck into the purgatory of mandatories, which might be good news for one Joe Joyce, because then he'll get a shot from it. Usyk will still beat him. Unfortunately he'll sadly box circles around him, but it'll still be a shot at the title. When it comes to the welterweights, like I said, the issue to me is mainly probably one of pride. Bud probably wants to do this and wants to do it in the way where we could keep it independent. Whereas PBC was Al Heyman, he'll do the fight as long as you're under Al Heyman. And that's not an avenue I think neither that Bud is gonna fall into. But like I said, this, like I mentioned before, this opens up a Pandora's box. It already kind of did with the Staniosis and the Boots Ennis situations petitioning to be mandatories. At some point in time, either you sit down and you actually hash things out in order to avoid this, because at least with Boots Ennis, I think Staniosis, I think both of them under the PUC stable. So they can at least keep those two a little bit at bay. We're trying to make this. But you can't control Oscar in this situation. And unfortunately, Golden Boy is in pretty big need of having people with belts at the moment. Like the next person that can actually get a shot and to me realistically has a shot is Zordo Ramirez against Bivol. Other than that, it's Virgil. And Virgil has a lot more upside right now. So
final question. My apologies, Daniel. Go on.
No problem. In that front, like they have a little bit more upside. So I lean towards neither, but if you force my hand, I kind of agree with Marquise. It will probably be the heavyweights because heavyweights make money.
Final question here as it pertains to Spence and Crawford. Where does Keith Thurman fit into the picture here? I know you mentioned the scenarios and you mentioned Boots and Ortiz, right? Alternative here for Spence. Could we see him fight Keith Thurman instead? Early quarter 2023. We know the kind of rivalry between them. I still insist when Thurman was on top and when he was unified champion, and Spence was calling him out, Thurman, he didn't see the fight. He didn't want none of it. Not necessarily because he was scared, maybe. Well, maybe it was. I don't know. Anyway, I think he felt it was high risk, low reward, because as we all know, we all remember the infamous video where Spence was in his face at that press event, say, "I want to fight you, let's do it." And Thurman kind of, brushed it off, didn't respond. After all these years, could we finally see that fight first quarter next year?
Possibility. It wouldn't surprise me. At this point, we'll have at least an idea of what's going on with Keith Thurman. I honestly believe the one thing that people forget about with Keith Thurman calling him out now and looking for Spence, as opposed to beforehand when beforehand back into like 2017, 2018, 2019, every PBC welterweight and their great grandma was calling out Manny Pacquiao. I don't understand how folks keep forgetting about this. They were all waiting their turn. The Adrian Broner fight. Keith Thurman had a fight with him in 2019. They were all waiting for Manny Pacquiao, and then Spence missed out on it. So now we're at this point with these guys. So I really think we get that fight. It's honestly, I kind of want to see it. I mean, it should have happened during this pandemic already, but that you can say that for about 80% of the fights already. I just hope we get something of note for these guys. And I really do think with Spence, it's got to be a big time name at this point. At night, he has all these unified belts, and you would think it's going to be Thurman next anyway, actually, unless he's really just waiting to get that mandatory with Stanionis at the first quarter out the way. But I think it'd be Thurman personally.
A lot of folks are accusing Bud of ducking I use that word to say this, and follow me here. Um, Bud has his fight against Avanesyan on December the 10th. Also on December the 10th, it was announced that Teofimo Lopez, former unified champion 135, who's on the comeback at 140. He's fighting Jose Pedraza. And I go to you on this one, Marquise. The reason I associate Duck with the last topic with this one, because you had a particular welterweight, junior welterweight, who has been calling for a fight with Teofimo, right? And I refer to Arnold Barboza, ranked guy in that division.
Mm-hmm.
Hopeful of that fight, very good junior welterweight southpaw. Given the fact that he was open about his desire to fight Teofimo, could Lopez be accused of ducking or Barboza in favor of a fight with Pedraza?
You know what? People use the word ducking with stuff like that, and if you talk to Rick Malage and Barbosa's management team and whatnot, they'll say the exact same thing. My thinking with all this at the end of the day is I think Teal's decisions actually are now being made courtesy of a higher up per se. I don't necessarily.
In other words, top rank is speaking for him, not the fighter speaking for himself.
Pretty much, and I say that affectionately because look at the matches they're giving him right now. They found him Pedro Campos at 140. He's getting Sniper Pedraza. I mean, this is the guy we've seen with the usual also reigns at 140. This is what Top Rank does. They build these guys up and then they set up that mega fight. And I'm just going to quote Teo on his own word for this. He was waiting for Josh Taylor and that whole wedding thing to go down. So I'm thinking one way or another we're getting that next year, hopefully. But I think they're trying to build up to that, and I think that has honestly, if I was corporate, that has more appeal to it. And considering that you saw the last fight that Teo had, he had the Bud Light commercials and the Bud Light, the hat and the ad and whatnot. They're trying to protect this guy. And let's be honest, Arnold Barboza is what you mentioned before with some of these guys, a low risk, a very low risk, low reward kind of fight for him. Let's be just being honest, where he's a top 10 guy, but if you're putting your money behind Teo to push this stuff up, you're gonna keep him safe per se. Not to use the word duck, but favorable opposition, like to call it. That's what they do.
Follow-up question here. I forgot to put this in the docket. My apologies for it. Taylor, right?
Yes.
You mentioned Josh Taylor. He has agreed to the rematch.
Yes.
Right?
With Catterall.
Catterall, I think it's February of next year. Do you think that Taylor will stay around long enough for a fight with Teofimo, given his, as we all know, pretty lengthy issues getting down to 140 pounds?
You know what? I'm intrigued about that, and I honestly, I'm actually intrigued to see what we see from Taylor in this fight at 140 again, to see if we get a totally different version of Josh Taylor, because it's been a long layoff for him actually too as well. I don't know, but I don't think he stays.
It'll be personally. What, a year layoff?
Yeah, at least a year.
Those two fights.
Yeah, it's been that long. It's like wow. So these guys, I mean, the inactivity with some of these guys is astounding. Wow, you would have thought, but. No, I'm thinking with Catterall that Taylor Catterall thing, because I think in that fight we get a replay of what we saw beforehand, where Taylor squeaks it out somehow. I'll be intrigued to see if Taylor moves up to 147, but he's in that same kind of position where like Prograis is, where it's like, is he 140? Is he 147? I mean, it's kind of one of those tight knit kind of deals. So if they had a Bridger Junior welter lightweight, this would be it for these guys at 143, but. They can't. I don't want to give any more bad ideas to these folks. So no, but no, I'd like to see. I'd like to see Taylor Teofimo at 140 next year if they stick around for it. But now I forgot about the whole weight thing and him just dumping all these belts to begin with because he doesn't want to pay the sanctioning fees or whatever reason or whatever have you. These defenses. So no, he's probably moving up.
I'm going to you, Daniel, get your insight on this, your thoughts, your reaction to the news of Teofimo fighting Pedraza. And I posed a question that I posed to Marquise. A lot of people view Bud as ducking Spence. Do you think that that in the end, Teofimo is ducking Pedraza, or do you think, to Marquise's point, that this is really not his decision, this decision of the higher ups, aka Aram and Top Rank?
Ducking is always a loaded word when it comes to boxing because we know it's supposed to
Oh,
signify
let's just
one
say
dude being a coward.
avoiding for the time being.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a loaded word, but this is a situation where you have to really, really rebuild Teo as far as an attraction, as far as his confidence, and as far as keeping him away from outside activities. And yeah, Barbosa's a good fight to do so because luckily we know with Top Rank, if they're going to rehab somebody, they're going to rehab somebody slowly. And especially in Teofimo's case, where if you don't do something, like he's going to do stupid things. So at the end of the day, I would probably say it's a smart move. I wouldn't call it ducking because at the end of the day, if you probably at this stage, if you put a fight between Teofimo Lopez and Pedraza, to me, Teofimo's going to win. He's younger, he has better reflexes, and he does have a little bit of chip on his shoulder. But this is just a slow rebuild. They have to do it because of the deal that he signed with Top Rank when he had all 4 belts before he lost to the Cambosos. They signed a good deal, a good amount. I think one of those factors is they have to have it as a pay-per-view fight. I think a couple of them. So they need to recoup part of that investment to make it worthwhile. Because eventually you're going to have Teofimo welterweight. It'll be either by later this year or by next year. It's going to happen. So you might as well recoup that investment while you can.
Yeah, let's. I'm not gonna lie. I want to see Teofimo and Pedraza, right? It was my hope that they will fight next. I hope now that they will fight first quarter next year. We'll see where it goes from here. Let's. No, I'm not going to talk about that. Let's do this. I've been critical of one Hyun-Mi Choi as has a lot of followers of women's boxing. For those who don't know, Hyun-Mi Choi, WBA champion at 130 pounds, right? She's been called out by both Michaela Mayer and Alycia Baumgardner. Mayer and Baumgardner fought on the 15th. Baumgardner won by split decision. Well, at a media event today for Katie Taylor, her upcoming fight against Carabajal, we will talk about that later on in the show. Hearn revealed, Daniel, that a fight between Baumgardner and Choi, that's on the table for January, February next year. Given their difficulties making that fight, and Mayer, both ladies in particular, said that Hyun-Mi Choi, she didn't deserve to be champion. Baumgardner tried to make a fight with Choi before she eventually accepted the fight with Mayer. Your reaction to the fight, that it looks like at long last, Hyun-Mi Choi is going to have a big fight, and it looks like it's going to be for all the belts at 130 pounds.
At some point, you have to pay the piper. You have to pay the piper at a certain point. Choi and the part of Choi's team that isn't Eddie Hearn, they staved this off as much as they could, getting stashed away in Korea. But you're at a point where undisputed is the flavor of the season when it comes to boxing, especially women's boxing. And if you have the means to do so, you might as well make the fight, because look what is the other option when it comes to Baumgardner. Either do a mandatory, or even though you said you didn't want to, you rematch Mayer. And once again, Eddie's not going to do business with Bob unless he has to. So this seemed like an inevitability at a certain point. Hopefully they give enough time. Maybe give a concession to Choi. Have to fight in Korea, maybe. But either way, we know what's going to happen. We know who's going to win. And that will be the big selling point. If there's enough clamor for a rematch with Mayer when it comes to Baumgardner.
Your reaction to the news that broke today, at least Hearn, I should say, claiming that we're going to see a fight for all the belts for undisputed 130 pounds between Baumgardner and Choi. And should the fight come off, Marquise, your early prediction?
You know what? I'll believe it when I see it from Hearn. Hearn's been talking a lot these past couple of days, guys. A lot of it for miscellaneous and Conor Benn reasons, but not. It's about time. I mean, he signed Choi during this pandemic. I mean, pretty much to play keep away for this event to happen. It was pretty much just waiting for. I don't even think it's. I can't even put this on Hearn on this. Choi's been holding that belt hostage pretty much for about a decade, and it's well known getting her to make a defense on it. It's always on her terms and at her mercy, and it's brutal. So it's just now it's a bill of relevance for women's boxing on the American side. So it's for visibility reasons. But I'm looking forward to seeing pretty much Baumgardner. I think Baumgardner gets her out of there. Actually, that's one of those fights that she can't stop Choi. Choi's also up there in age too, so. It's the IBF belt. We're talking way too much longer about this IBF belt than I think we should, guys. Let's be honest.
Well, she's WBA heavy, but I concede your point.
Yeah.
Speaking of what you mentioned about Hearn and how he tends to run his mouth, particularly in light of Conor Benn, let's touch on that right quick. Again, I wrote about this with Three Kings Boxing. You can check it out on threekingsboxing.com. Conor Benn has the British Boxing Board of Control, has announced that Conor Benn has basically relinquished his boxing license over in Great Britain to either one of you gentlemen. Your reaction to Benn's decision, what does it mean for his future in Great Britain? Eddie Hearn said he's in a significant fight to kind of salvage his career. Paraphrasing him, is this the last we're going to see of Conor Benn fighting in the UK? He's going to fight abroad. My early thoughts that with his dad, legendary UK fighter, British fighter Nigel Benn, living in Australia, could we see Conor relocate to Australia? Your thoughts?
Yep. We knew this was going to happen. As soon as even the idea of a 4-year ban came out of the British Boxing Board of Control when it came to the situation, as soon as that even made it to the public, you kind of knew that Conor Benn's days in fighting in the UK are over. Now, it does make sense to go through Australia and try to build yourself there through the fights, but you're not going to build yourself up, unfortunately. Not against the Maloney brothers. I mean, as far as popularity, like native sons, not against the Maloney brothers, not against Cambosos, even as damaged as he is, and not against Tim Tszyu. Which realistically, if you're probably going to stay in the weight class, going to do it, that's the guy you're going to be facing. That's a battle you're not going to win. So, more than likely, and I did mention this when the test came in, your best bet's going to be not a move to Australia, but probably a move here to the US. It's a clean slate. You can pretty much market it as the son of the great Nigel Benn is coming here to conquer the States. Because outside of the real hardcore heads, outside like people like us here, they're not going to know Conor Benn's situation in the UK. He's going to be a fresh new fighter that he can come in and start rebuilding himself. The only thing's going to be is now he has to really, really be careful. because if he even dares to try to go the WBC route, that leaves bladder testing if he ever gets to the top 15. And that's going to be the big tell. If he signs up for bladder testing, okay, then he's trying to do things on the up and up. The minute that he doesn't, you can pretty much label anything that he does as suspect.
The future of Conor Ben Marquise, what say you?
He's got to answer this drug test. I don't. Like, he can't just flee the country looking like that guy. So he's got to answer for this one way or another. He's going to have to sit this one out somewhere. My original thinking was at first that they do the old Luxembourg Boxing Council route like everybody else, but I just think he just sits a year out or something. Thinks we all have amnesia or dementia, or look at the Men in Black pen and we forget this all happened. But some way or another, he's going to have to answer for this. But I mean, Tyson Fury did something similar to this before when he dropped his. I mean, it's a fighting license. He can easily pay and get it back, obviously, like anybody else. It's not. It should be a bigger deal. It's more of him just trying to duck actually the responding back to that, or to the hearing for that B sample, which we all know at this point clearly is what the A sample was, and he doesn't want to deal with it and wants to keep playing deny until time runs out some way or another.
And we'll certainly keep you abreast, keep you updated on this. What is on this evolving, developing story. Let's get to some fights here. We're going to break down. I'm going to add in some additional fights because I'm not sure what days I may be on next week. One particular unification bout that's happening in Japan, right? But for the time being, let's start off with the return of Vasiliy Lomachenko, who we all know his situation. Took a hiatus because his country is in war. His country of Ukraine, is in war with Russia. He left the sport to join his comrades, to be with his people, to fight for his people. He returned to the ring this Saturday against Jamaine Ortiz, and the layoff for Loma. Before he left, we all know his status. He had lost to the aforementioned Teofimo Lopez. Returned to defeat Comey. He looked his old usual self. If Loma is at his top of his game, he is as good as anyone in the lightweight division. The argument can be made that if he's at his best, he's the best at 135 pounds. But given his layoff, given his age, right, and given his mental and spiritual frame conditioning right now, you just don't know where he's at from that perspective, given what's still ongoing in his homeland. What do you expect to see from the former pound for pound king Vasiliy Lomachenko in his upcoming fight for against Ortiz? Any of you two can tackle this.
I think we're going to see a version of Loma that we saw last time out against Nakatani, actually. I think because the fight kind of sets up the same way in a bizarre instance. I'm kind of just looking for this as just to see what he looks like and get through this as a stay busy. It's interesting, stay busy. I don't know. People are thinking that this guy has a puncher's chance. I think he does too, Jamaine Ortiz. I mean, I think the one thing that keeps Ortiz in these fights, I've realized just looking back at stuff, is when he's away from folks at distance, he's pretty good. And that was the one thing that Loma had trouble with in the Teofimo Lopez fight. But you can also make that up to a case of either being the hurt shoulder or not one to punch. Either way, it was the first 6 rounds of nothing happening. But I'm looking forward to seeing Loma get by. I think I'm going to think he's going to get by like the same way he beat Nakatani by late stoppage. It just sets up eventually that fight that they kept hinting at. Bob's been saying it, so it must be true. The fight against Devin Haney next year.
Ortiz, of course, last time out defeated former junior lightweight champion Jamel Herring. Let's be honest here, Daniel. A lot of that was about Herring, who did not look well at all. And after the fight, Herring announced his retirement. Given that, to Marquise's point, Daniel, Jamaine Ortiz, he's a decent skilled guy, and he's most effective at distance, right? And Marquise mentioned how in some fights that one of, if you want to call it a weakness of Lomachenko. When a guy fights him at distance and they force Lomachenko to come to him, he's not always as effective as when a guy comes to him. How much of a chance do you give Jamaine Ortiz in this fight?
None. Absolutely none. Absolutely none. Because the main thing with Loma is, Papachenko that didn't. He hasn't sat down or been not doing anything, even while still technically fighting Russia. He's been doing some type of training, either going back to the folk dancing or just some basic exercise. He's been active in some way or another. While it is true, yeah, Loma's much better as a counter puncher than coming over as being aggressive. He can find ways to win, and unless it's a situation where we see a fighter become old overnight, then Lomas is probably going to use his angles, going to use his hand speed, and use his better coordination and punching to make this a pretty easy fight and lock himself in for a fight with Haney, which is actually would be a very, very interesting fight. Because if he gets past Haney, then you get Bob's ultimate plan, him and Shakur, which has been pretty much the plan for the past, near a decade by now. When it came to those two, as soon as those two signed with Tom Frank, we knew that was the end goal for Bob, and he might get it.
Indeed, and to your point, Daniel, the expectation that Loma is going to win. He has said he wants a fight. He wants to fight next undisputed champion Devin Haney, who's coming off a rematch win against Kambosos down in Australia. That's a fight I would love to see. I would also love to see Lomachenko fight Shakur Stevenson. I think that would be just a high level boxing chess match, right? Love to see that as well. So, but he has to go through Jamaine Ortiz, and let's see how he will do. I'm with you. I feel he will win, but the question for me is how well he will look. Let's move on to some other fights here, and let's go from that fight between men's lightweights to women's lightweights, specifically the women's undisputed lightweight champion Katie Taylor, who's returning to the ring, fighting at the O2 in fighting in London, excuse me, against Karen Elizabeth Carabajal. Daniel, we all remember the last fight with Katie Taylor, that epic split decision with Amanda Serrano at Madison Square Garden, one of the fights of the year. It could be argued that is the fight of the year so far for 2022. A lot of people want to see an immediate rematch. Is not going to happen. She's returning against the ring. I think this is a mandatory defense against Carvajal. Be that as it may, not many people know about her. Not the easiest to find film of her. Is this just basically a showcase fight for Taylor in her home area, not her homeland of Ireland, but her home area of the UK?
Pretty much, yeah. You need to really have a good showcase bout after that crowd watched her lose to Amanda Serrano, even though the judges gave it to her. You need a good showcase fight, something to build her back up, because at the end point, the rematch is going to get called for. And you're hoping that you still look good enough where, since, like I said, you got the decision, you can force the fight to be in the UK, where even though we've seen UK judges in women's fights actually do the right thing the last time we saw them in a major fight, you can never leave it to the judges in the UK against a UK or UK affiliated fighter, especially if you're an American.
Indeed.
So,
indeed. Go ahead.
No. So that's what I was about to. Yeah, I'm about to sneeze.
Excuse me. And let's hope she gets this win, right? Excuse me for the background ringing. Let's hope she gets this win, and hopefully that leads into the rematch with Serrano um, early first, early quarter next year. That is my personal hope. Go from that fight to Joseph JoJo Diaz, Marquise.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's fighting William Zepeda, and yeah, we know that JoJo Diaz is a former champion at 130 pounds, but am I wrong for not really being that enthusiastic about this fight? Much in the same way, I was pretty when it came to Caleb Plant and Andre Durrell. I'm kind of that same way here. Help me get excited about this fight.
I can't, and I'm surprised she was even about that. Yeah, I'm surprised she was even about that Plant Darrell fight. That fight should have happened literally, guys, 5 years ago. I was all set on all of that. But the one thing with Diaz in this, I'm looking forward to seeing if CP adjusts and this is pretty much like one of those do or die things in the end of the line kind of fights for him. So I'm expecting to see something a little different out of him more than anything else, which would make this more interesting than what it should be. But I just think Zepeda is just one of those guys at this point. But it's really nothing. There's really nothing on that Golden Boy card, surprisingly, to be honest with you, man. That's really like, man, I got to see this. Like, it's a couple of decent stuff. It's not anything that you have to go out your way to go watch.
Do you share my lack of enthusiasm, Daniel?
No. In this sense, well, it may be just because I am a decent fan when it comes to JoJo Diaz. So I've seen what he can do, how close he came to beating Gary Russell Jr., and how close we can actually make it in that front. But I think what hurts him the most when it comes to fights like this is the fact that he can't really. It looks like there is a ceiling that he can't top in. And when this is a regular fight, I can see how people don't want to get excited about it, but the lightweight picture is what you need to picture to see, because this isn't going to lead to a title fight. This isn't going to lead into him fighting Haney anytime soon. But if he keeps building himself back up, maybe he doesn't have to fight Haney. Maybe he gets to fight the Cambozos, make some money in Australia, and then build himself up for the actual weight class, because that's the most he probably can do at the moment. And just like he's one of the good, nice guys in the sport, one of the good guys in the sport. You always want to see him do good.
I was going to start slow down the show, but I forgot to mention this one bit of news. To both of you, your reaction to Jesse Bam Rodriguez deciding to vacate the WBC junior bantamweight title.
It's interesting. I mean, he's only 22, and maybe if he's able to fluctuate, like, from it's only 3 pounds. If he's still able to do it, then so be it. I mean, what's for him at 112? I'm looking forward to seeing him take on Sonny Edwards. I mean, that's the name I keep hearing about. I'm looking. He's just one of those guys that I think wants to just take over everything. And if he wants to go back down and take over 112 again, okay.
Yeah, that was the thing. I saw that news. Did he do it to go down, or is he going
down
up?
to flyweight?
Yeah.
Oh, then he probably, more than likely, his team advised him probably that he's probably not ready. Based on his last fight, he's probably not ready to take on either Gallo or Chocolatito at this stage of his career yet. So it is a safer bet to go down to 112. And yeah, Sonny Edwards, that's going to be in that. That would be a fun fight to make. And he could dominate pretty easily then at 112, and then let himself get into 115 a little bit more naturally. Because we have to remember, that was a pretty interesting jump that he made when he had to make that fight against Cuadras. And he had some success, but we've seen in his last fight, there's still some hurdles now that can actually hurt him at this stage. So going back down to 112, handling business there, letting your body get more acclimated to the point when you go back to 115, you're more ready. That works well. And let's face it, unfortunately, sadly, that you will be facing then an older Chocolatito and an older Gallo, which might actually benefit him.
I would like to see him at stay at 115. Like I said, like you said, he's only 23. His uh, body can easily adjust to the weight. Excuse me, I'm going to delete and a couple of comments that I see, remove a couple of comments I see on the live pound for pound boxing report YouTube page because no, not that stuff here, not here. Check that somewhere else. Anyway, trolls. Um, but if he wants to decide, if he since he's moving back down to 112 pounds, there are fights for him there as well. You mentioned Sonny Edwards. Um, there's also Junto Nakatani who has the WBO belt. That would be a really good fight to me. That's a 50-50, 60-40 fight between Bam and Nakatani as well. They've hinted at this all the while during Bam's days at 115 pounds champ when he made the decision to move up from 108 to fight Quadras for the belts. Uh, 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 his trainer Garcia has always suggested that eventually they will go back down to 112 and 108, and we see it happening now. We will see what Matchroom has in plans for Bam moving forward. But yeah, going to be not the longest show, a little over an hour this evening. We're going to end things on that note. Again, for those who wondered where is Gail, as I mentioned at the very beginning, she wasn't going to be on this evening. Hopefully, she will be. No. Just escapes my mind. One more fight I want to dive into because I don't know what's going to happen when the next time you will see us here live. Uh, quickly, Marquise and Daniel. Junior flyweight unification bout happening in Japan. It's going to air live on ESPN Plus. Quick warning here: fight's going to air live. The card is going to air live. The event on ESPN Plus, excuse me, going to air live 7:30 a.m. On November 1st. As WBC 108-pound champion Kinshiro Taraji going to fight Hiroto Koiguchi, who is the WBA champion, WBA super champ. The fight is going to happen in Saitama, Japan, again on ESPN Plus, early in the morning. Quick word on that. Quick breakdown, please.
It's gonna be a fun fight. I'm looking forward to that actually. And I'm not a person for I'm not the guy, to be honest with you guys, that is racing to be up at 6 a.m. in the morning for these fight cards. And it's 7:30 a.m. Eastern, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 2 hours back for me. So that's 5:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. I gotta go to work, but I'll see what I can. I'll see what I can of this nonetheless. But no, it should be a fun one actually. I think Coach may pull this out actually.
This is going to be fun.
Yep.
This is going to be fun. Yeah, Kinshiro versus Koguchi. That's been a fight that people have wanted to see for a good while. And we almost didn't get it. But luckily Kinshiro's done enough where this fight is viable again. And yeah, it's 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. Yeah, and it is the day after Halloween. But you know what? We all have to get up early at some point. And might sort of watch this and then get ready, getting ready for work, and then it'll be a good way to start November because the calendar is unfortunately starting to wind down a little bit.
Yeah, and again, I'll probably if y'all will not be up early in the morning, I probably will because looks like I'll be covering that fight for Three Kings. Looking forward to it. I'm going to favor Koiguchi because his best bet is to draw Taraji in a firefight, as we've seen in Taraji's sole loss. If you can get the early advantage on him, he can become impatient, and he's never been one to turn away from the action when things get heated. So I think he will draw Taraji in that firefight, and that's his best advantage. I think he's the better inside fighter, Koiguchi. Maybe physically stronger, in my opinion, as well. So I'm going with Koiguchi by decision. Taraji could easily win this. I just hope the fight lives up to the hype. And I think we're going to shut down things on that note. I want to thank those. If you're checking us out again, if you're checking us out live on YouTube or checking us out on YouTube at a later date, please, and you like what you heard this during this particular episode, please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. And when you hit subscribe, hit that subscribe with the bell so you get notifications when the next episode is coming. For Gail, who's not with us this evening, if you want to talk boxing, if you want to talk media, or if you want to check out her stuff on NY Fights and Community, you can check out her boxing writing on nyfights.com. You can also check out her stuff on Community's digital news, CommDigi news.com. And you can check her out on Twitter as well, chopping it up, talking to Sweet Science at PR Pro San Diego. And I'll go to you, Marquise, for those who want to check out your work on NY Fights for just talking boxing, pro wrestling, anything in general. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yeah, I'm on the tweet deck over at Weak Sauce Radio. That's the Twitter, Instagram, all that social media shenanigans. I'm pretty much on Twitter most of the time during the week, looking for anything of note, anything of substance, like everybody else. Just trying to keep up with the news. Let's be honest, guys. It's been a bizarre and very mundane past few couple of weeks. You'd almost say past couple of months, actually. But
Yeah.
at least we have towards the end of the year, guys, fights we can actually talk about as opposed to fantasy booking, which is what we've been doing pretty much all summer long here. So, but yeah, pretty much Weak Sauce Radio's the social media handles. nyfights.com is the box page along with Gail's stuff. Find my stuff there too. It's all good at NY Fights.
Absolutely. You've been on the show before, and I want to thank you. This is pretty late notice. Having you on the show this evening. I hope to have you back on again.
Always, Michael. It's always fun talking to you guys, man. It's boxing.
Indeed. I'll go to you, Daniel. Last but certainly not least, for those who want to talk the Sweet Science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Rawkus99, RAWKUZ99. Definitely catch me on there. Yeah, the calendar's winding down. We're getting ready for the new year. And there's a lot of craziness, unfortunately, happening. But the league boxing getting out of control. MJF got put through a table, apparently, by Stokely Hathaway. So craziness happening.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me on Twitter, you can do so. Brother JR at Brother JR76. If you want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance with me on IG, you can do so at Brother JRSC. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to check out all things pound for pound boxing report, please check out the site p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us again, you can do so p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find the links to where to check us out all over social media, the links to the various pages, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, IG, Tumblr. Also links to where to check out the podcast on all RSS distribution feeds, be it Spotify, be it Anchor, be it Apple Podcasts, be it Google Podcasts, anywhere and everywhere else in between, with the exception of Amazon. Also, links to where you can donate to Pound for Pound Box Report, and last but certainly not least, links to the Beachbody On Demand. On the next episode, we will do a recap of the return of Lomachenko, his bout against Jamaine Ortiz. Also recap Katie Taylor, her upcoming fight against Carabajal. Recap JoJo Diaz and Zepeda. And depending on when we get back, either we will do another round of discussion on Koiguchi Taraji, or we will do a recap of Koiguchi Taraji, the unification bout down at 108 pounds. Also on that card, Jonathan Gonzalez. He's defending his WBO 108 pound title as well. And I mentioned Nakatani while talking about Bam Rodriguez. He's fighting as well on the same card on a 9 title bout. And also, we will do a preview of the light heavyweight showdown between Dimitri Bivol making his return to the ring since his win over Canelo Alvarez earlier this year in May. Bivol returning to the ring to defend his light heavyweight title against Zerda Ramirez on the undercard. Very, very good, excellent women's bout. Chantel Cameron, who is unified champion at 140 pounds. She's fighting Jessica McCaskill, who's undisputed women's welterweight champion. They're moving down in a strange scenario. Those ladies are fighting for all of the belts at 140 pounds. Also on that card, you got Rakhimov fighting Zelfa Barrett for the vacant IPF 130-pound title. That's all happening on the 5th in Abu Dhabi on the Zone. Also on the 5th on Showtime. Slept on 168-pounder David Morrell defending his WBA regular strap against a mandatory defense. I'm not going to try to pronounce it in the last name. I'll just call him Idos Y, because if I try to Sinuli, that's all I can get. My apologies for butchering his name. So we will talk about all of those fights and all of that action on the next episode. So again, for Marquise, for Daniel again, and for Gail, who was not with us this evening, also everybody else who supports the show, be it Jacob, be it Gus, be it Bo, senior writer for Three Kings Boxing, who's been on numerous times in the past. So for everybody, this is episode 382 of Pound for Pound Box Report. For Marquise, for Daniel, I'm your host, Michael. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good one, good evening, good night.